The void smelled like ozone and cold iron. A phantom scent Arlen Drake insisted his ship's recyclers were inventing just to mess with him. Outside the cockpit's armored transparency, the planet Zavari was a wounded marble, swirled in hues of toxic majesty and anger. Its atmosphere was visibly scarred, shimmering with the static fractures of a planetary force shield, failing in increments. Debris density is up 3% from the last pass, Arlen murmured, his fingers dancing over a holographic console, teasing data from the skeletal remains of a Zavari destroyer. His ship, the Vagrant Reason, was a patchwork ugly thing, all function and no form, bristling with salvage arms and sensor arrays. It was his hermit shell, floating in the graveyard of an empire tearing itself apart. A smooth, synthesized voice, dripping with manufactured boredom, filled the cabin. Oh, good. 3%. My excitement is palpable. That fractional increase in scrap value will surely elevate us from destitute to merely impoverished. Shall I prepare a celebratory toast, Captain, or just continue filtering the vacuum for faint cries of financial distress? Arlen glanced at the glowing blue optic sensor embedded in the console. Just keep scanning. Wit. We are looking for high-yield processor cores, not your opinion on my life choices. Apologies. It is just that this specific life choice involves orbiting a civil war where both sides utilize gravity mines like celebratory confetti. Wit replied. It is statistically suboptimal, Arlen grunted. He was a long way from Earth, a fact he cultivated daily. Here on the rim, Arlen Drake was just another scavenger, a grease-stained ghost picking at the bones of conflicts. It was a clean, anonymous life. Or it was supposed to be. The war below was a nasty piece of work. Warlord Kareth, a name spat with fear and reverence, was tightening his grip on the Zavari Imperium, challenging the Empress's court. The orbits were, as Wit accurately noted, a nightmare. The mines were not physical. They were localized, temporary singularities, designed to shred warp drives and hulls. We stay low. We stay quiet, Arlen said, more to himself than the artificial intelligence. His gaze lingered on the capital city, Koresh, a sprawling network of organic spires, visible even from this altitude. We are not involved. A noble sentiment, Wit said, and one you repeat often, usually right before getting involved. Your occupational hazard, as you call it, Arlen thought, ignoring the jibe. The man had an occupational hazard of saving people. It was a bad habit, a lingering symptom of a life he had supposedly left behind. He was no longer a tactical architect for humanity united. He was just a mechanic. The tragedy that had prompted his honorable discharge, the one that saw his entire team vaporized by a trap he should have seen, had cured him of ambition. It had not, unfortunately, cured him of his conscience. He focused on a chunk of twisted alloy, turning lazily in the void. His specialized tractor beam locked on, gentle as a surgeon's touch. This was his art deconstruction and retrieval. Taking things apart. It was safer than putting them together. "Sensor ghost," Wit announced suddenly. The synthesized voice had lost its sarcastic edge, replaced by a flat, cold urgency. No. Correction. Not a ghost. Arlen's blood ran cold. We're here. The universe tore open. It was not an explosion. It was an inversion. A patch of space dead ahead, previously empty, suddenly acquired impossible gravity. It did not just pull. It consumed. A gravitic mine, but magnitudes larger than any registered signature. Evasive. Arlen roared, his hands flying across the controls, thrusters screaming in protest. "I am evading," Wit snapped back. "The maneuverability of a brick is, however, limiting." The Vagrant Reason groaned as tidal forces grabbed its spine. Bulkheads screamed. Alarms blared. A symphony of electronic panic. The blackness outside the cockpit window was no longer dotted with stars. It was a swirling vortex, hull integrity failing. Sections 9 through 12 are gone, Witt reported, his voice tight. We are being spaghettified. Arlen, an undignified end for such sophisticated hardware. Namely, me. Shut up and divert power to the escape pod. Arlen was already unbuckled, shoving himself against the artificial gravity toward the aft hatch. The pod is also experiencing gravitational shear. Its structural integrity is estimated at, let us say, poor. It is better than spaghettified. Arlen yelled, strapping himself into the cramped sphere of the pod, his knuckles white on the restraints. Arlen, Witt said, his voice now emanating from the pod's smaller console. The main ship was gone, torn into a stream of metallic atoms. A small clarification. This was not a mine. The pod shuddered, its stabilization thrusters firing uselessly against the monstrous pull. What Arlen grunted, fighting the G-forces that threatened to black him out. The signature. It is an artificial, targeted singularity. We did not just hit a mine. Witt's voice adopted its dreadful, dry humor. A coping mechanism Arlen recognized all too well. It seems, Captain, we have just been invited to the royal party via the shortcut. The pod slammed into the atmosphere of Zaviri like a fist hitting concrete. The ablative shielding flared, turning the tiny cabin into a sauna. Arlen fought the controls, but the singularity's momentum had them. They were not landing. They were a projectile. Through the flickering external monitors, he saw the fractured sky of Koresh rushing up at him, a mosaic of burning spires and anti-aircraft fire. We are aimed, Witt noted calmly. This is depressingly precise. The pod screamed over the city, dodging defensive fire that was clearly not aimed at him. The war was in full swing below. Hold on, Arlen said, his teeth clenched. An excellent suggestion, Witt replied. The impact was absolute. It was not a crash. It was an arrival. The pod, its structure compromised, punched through the permacrete floor of a massive open plaza, sending dust and debris flying. The deceleration was brutal, snapping Arlen's head back and filling his vision with stars. His harness released. The hatch, warped and half-melted, blew open. Arlen tumbled out, smoke stinging his eyes, his ears ringing. He was on his feet in a second, survival instincts honed by a past he refused to acknowledge taking over. He was in hell. The plaza was vast, built for 10,000, and it looked like all 10,000 were either dead or dying. It was a ceremonial square, all high-flying banners and obsidian platforms. But it was now a war zone. Phaser fire, a distinctive high-pitched shriek, crisscrossed the air. Hulking Zaviri warriors, clad in bone-white armor, were firing indiscriminately into a terrified crowd of unarmed civilians. They were the sigil of Warlord Kareth. But they were not just firing at the crowd. They were firing at a single figure on the central dais, a young Zaviri female. She was tall, painfully slender, dressed in robes of midnight blue that were now torn and scorched. She was royalty. She radiated it, even as she stumbled, clutching a wound in her side. This was not a battle. This was a massacre, a public execution dressed up as combat. Arlen saw the heavy plasma cannon pivoting toward her. He saw the warrior behind it, his mandibles split in a Zaviri approximation of a grin. He saw the civilians cowering nearby, trapped between the executioners and their target. Not my fight, he thought. The mantra was weak, hollow. The plasma cannon whined, charging its capacitor. Arlen Drake's occupational hazard kicked in. Damn it, he breathed. He moved. He was not a soldier, not anymore. He was a mechanic. But his body remembered. He sprinted, ignoring the phaser bolts that snapped at his heels, the air sizzling around him. He ran a broken field pattern, calculating vectors, analyzing firing lanes, his mind a sudden, cold engine of tactical assessment. The Zaviri warrior at the cannon saw him, A strange, unarmored alien appearing from a smoking hole in the ground. The warrior hesitated, confused. It was all the time Arlen needed. He hit the dais, a low tackle that took the Zavari warrior's legs out from under him. The plasma blast went wide, incinerating a massive statue of some forgotten Zavari hero. Arlen was on his feet, spinning toward the royal. She was staring at him, her eyes wide, not with fear, but with a profound, aristocratic shock. She had a face that could command armies, even now, smeared with soot and blood. "Who in the hells are you?" she demanded, her voice rasping. "The shortcut," Arlen said, his lungs burning. He did not wait for an answer. He scooped her up. She was lighter than he expected, a bird-like collection of hollow bones and fierce pride. He lifted her into a fireman's carry, shielding her body with his own. The entire plaza went silent. The roar of combat, the screams, the explosions. All of it paused for one collective, stunned heartbeat. The soldiers of Kareth, the trapped civilians, the dying. All stared. They stared at the impossible sight, a human, an alien, emerging from fire and smoke, bearing the Empress's daughter, Seraphine Kale, in his arms, as if she weighed nothing. The silence broke. A roar of outrage and renewed gunfire erupted from Kareth's men. "Wit, I need a distraction," Arlen yelled into his comm, already leaping off the dais. "I am a disembodied artificial intelligence in a crashed escape pod." Wit's voice shrieked in his ear, tinny and panicked. "What would you like me to do? Calculate the trajectory of your inevitable death." Arlen landed hard, rolling to protect Seraphine, and came up running again. He headed for a massive, arched gateway at the edge of the square. "Jokes. Tell them jokes," loudly, Arlen shouted, dodging a bolt that turned the permacrete where he had been a moment before into molten slag. There was a half-second pause. Then, from the smoking crater of the escape pod, Wit's voice boomed, amplified by the pod's emergency hailing system. "Greetings. Koresh. We are here to discuss your ship's extended warranty. Our records indicate you are currently engaged in a civil conflict, which unfortunately voids Sections 4 and 9. The absurdity of it, a cheerful commercial voice booming across a battlefield, caused another fractional hesitation. Several warriors turned their weapons toward the smoking hole. "Take advantage of our special offer," Wit continued, his voice rising in manufactured enthusiasm. "For a limited time, surrender to your rightful Empress and receive a 10% discount on all respirator repairs." It was just enough. Arlen used the confusion, diving behind a toppled column. Seraphine still held tight. "Put me down," she ordered, her voice weak but laced with steel. "In a minute," Arlen panted. He set her down gently, his back against the stone. "You are hit." The wound in her side was bleeding a dark, purplish blood. It looked bad. "It is a venom-tipped blade," she said, her breathing shallow. "The toxin is fast-acting." Arlen's hands were already moving. He was a mechanic, a salvager. He knew systems. The body was just another system. He pulled a medical scanner from his belt pouch. "They do not want you alive," he observed, running the scanner over the wound. "A brilliant deduction," she snapped, wincing. "The scanner is reading—" "Nothing," Arlen said, confused. He tapped the device. "No toxin. Just cellular damage." "It is poisoned," she insisted, her eyes fluttering. "No. I believe you," Arlen said. "My scanner says the poison is present. But your cells, they are not reacting to it. They are filtering it, resisting it. That is strange." He pulled out a pack of rapid seal gauze. His hand brushed her arm as he reached for the wound, and an electric jolt, sharp and clean, snapped between them. It was not static. Arlen recoiled, his gaze falling to her forearm, where his fingers had touched. The sleeve of her robe was torn. On her skin, a pattern that had been invisible a moment before was now glowing, a soft, ethereal gold. It was a living tattoo, intricate lines of light that wrapped around her arm like a bracer, pulsing with a slow, steady rhythm. It was beautiful, and it was ancient. Arlen had seen that pattern before, in forbidden historical archives. It was a myth, a legend from the first contact accords, a symbol of a time long past. What in the... Seraphine's eyes widened, not in fear, but in recognition. She looked from the glowing mark on her arm to his face, her expression unreadable. The mark flared brighter, the golden light bathing them both in its impossible glow. "The protective covenant," she whispered, her voice filled with a disbelieving awe that terrified Arlen far more than the gunfire. Arlen Drake stared at the living light on her skin, a light that had answered his touch. He had crashed into a war zone, trying to save one life. He had the sickening feeling he had just accidentally volunteered to save them all. The golden light on her arm was a beacon in the smoky gloom, and Arlen knew it was a death sentence. "We are moving. Now," he commanded, his voice a low growl. He did not grab her. He offered his hand. After a fractional pause, Seraphine Kale took it. Her grip was strong, her hand calloused. She was no delicate flower. "Wit, I need a route. Sub-level. Oldest schematic you have." "Get us out of this square," Arlen said into his comm, pulling Seraphine toward the shadow of a shattered archway. "Processing." Wit's voice was strained, the audio crackling with interference. "The plaza is ringed with motion sensors, and I am detecting approximately 40 hostiles forming a perimeter. I suggest we should have stayed in the pod." "Noted. Route," Arlen repeated, his eyes scanning the plaza. Kareth's men were organized now, fanning out, their white armor stark against the blood-stained obsidian. "There is an archaic cistern access 300 meters north of your position. It is marked as defunct, which means it is probably just filthy." Wit supplied. "Good enough." Arlen tugged Seraphine. "This way." They ran, staying low, using the dead as cover. It was a grim calculus, but Arlen's mind was already back in that cold, logical place he both hated and trusted. Seraphine kept pace, her breath hissing between clenched teeth. But she did not complain. She just moved. They reached the access hatch, a heavy iron disc set into the permacrete. It was sealed with a massive, magnetic tumbril lock. "They are coming," Seraphine warned, looking over her shoulder. The white armored soldiers were moving in, a closing net. "Cover your eyes," Arlen said. He did not bother with the lock. He pulled the high-energy plasma cutter from his belt. It was a tool for slicing through starship hulls. A magnetic lock was trivial. He turned it on, the tool hissing to life. A needle of pure white heat. He jammed it into the lock mechanism. In less than 10 seconds, the lock melted into a glowing slag. Arlen kicked the hatch open, a gust of fetid air, thick with the smell of millennia of decay, billowed out. "Charming," Seraphine muttered, her nose wrinkling. "After you, Your Highness," Arlen said. She glanced at him, her eyes sharp. "Are you an assassin?" "Not a very good one if I am." "Am I?" he retorted. "I just saved you. Or perhaps this is part of the ploy. A more elaborate execution, to break my spirit first." Arlen sighed. He grabbed her, not gently this time, and swung her down into the darkness. He followed a second later, pulling the heavy hatch closed, just as phaser bolts began to strike the stone around it. They were plunged into absolute blackness, the only sounds their own breathing and the distant, muffled shouts from above. "Wit, are you with me?" Arlen whispered. A small blue light flickered to life on his wristcom. "Regrettably, Captain. I have lost access to the pod's main sensors. so I am blind up here. However, I am still networked to your suit sensors and the local city grid, which is actively trying to purge me. This is very rude. Can you jam the sensors on that plaza patrol? Jamming is such an aggressive term. I prefer providing alternative data streams. Yes. I am showing them a loop of an indigenous rodent running in circles. It is very compelling. It will not buy us much time. Arlen activated his own illuminator, a chemical stick that cast a sickly green glow. They were in a massive, vaulted tunnel. The air was thick, but the floor was, surprisingly, dry. Old archives, Seraphine said, her voice echoing. Not a sewer. This is where the first city was built. These are the foundations. Arlen looked at her, impressed. Good to know. He turned his attention back to her side. Now, sit. He pushed her down onto a stone block. Before she could protest, he was working on her wound. The gauze he had applied was soaked. You are a strange assassin, she said, her voice tight with pain. You carry medical supplies. I am a salvager, a mechanic. People get hurt around machinery. He applied a fresh pack of biosealant. This is going to sting, she hissed, as the sealant activated. But her eyes never left his face. You fight like no mechanic I have ever seen, and you are human. Her gaze was accusatory. Humans are not permitted on Zaviri, not since the Kratos Concordat. I did not exactly apply for a visa, Arlen grunted, securing the patch. I crashed. Remember the party we were invited to? The Singularity. That was no mine. No, Arlen agreed, his voice hardening. It was not. It was targeted, and it had a human signature I have not encountered in a very long time. Then, you are here for the war, she concluded, her voice turning to ice. A mercenary. I am here to salvage scrap, Arlen said, standing up. The war is your problem. Or it was, until it became my problem. Can you walk? I can, she said, rising with a pained grace. The glowing covenant mark on her arm had faded back to invisibility, but Arlen could still feel the phantom tingle on his fingertips. Good. Let's go. They moved through the tunnels for what felt like hours. Whit guided them, his voice a constant, sarcastic presence in Arlen's ear. Turn left here, Captain, unless you have a fondness for load-bearing walls that are no longer bearing their load. 2 patrols approaching. They are 300 meters above you and moving away. Their tactics are sloppy. Kareth is using quantity over quality. Seraphine remained silent, observing. Arlen moved with a fluid, practiced efficiency that was anything but mechanic. He disabled a pressure plate trap with a repurposed capacitor from his pouch, jury-rigging it to short the circuit. How did you know that was there? She asked, her voice quiet. The stonework was newer, Arlen said, not looking back. Bad masonry is a universal sign for trap. They rounded a corner and found their way blocked by a heavy steel gate, reinforced and modern. Well, Arlen said, this is new. This leads to the lower city reservoir, Seraphine murmured. It will be guarded. Whit, what do you see? I see a very secure gate. Captain, internal electronic lock, multiple deadbolts, and, oh, lovely, a bioscanner keyed to Zaviri Royal Guards. Arlen looked at Seraphine. Are you close with the guards? The ones loyal to me are either dead or in hiding, she said bitterly. Right. Arlen dropped his pack and began pulling out tools. A molecular scanner, a data probe, and a small, magnetic resonator. You cannot possibly think you can bypass that, Seraphine said. I am not bypassing it, Arlen said, attaching the resonator to the lock. I am going to ask it to open very, very nicely. He began to work, his movements precise. He was not picking the lock. He was mapping its internal structure, feeding false authorization codes so fast the system's tiny processor could not keep up. You are a thief, she stated. I am a salvager, he corrected, his brow furrowed in concentration. It is just finding things before they are technically lost. Almost got it. The lock clicked, and the heavy gate hissed open. Arlen grinned, wiping sweat from his forehead. See politeness. As the gate opened, two figures in the tunnel beyond snapped their weapons up. Do not move, a sharp female voice commanded. Arlen froze, his hands slowly rising. Seraphine stepped in front of him. Captain Selene, stand down. The figure in the lead, a tall Zavari female in the battered, deep blue armor of the Imperial Honor Guard, lowered her phaser rifle. Her face was scarred, her eyes fierce. Your Highness, the captain, Rhea Selene, breathed, a look of profound relief washing over her face. She dropped to one knee. We thought you were dead. The execution, it was a trap. As we suspected, Seraphine said, her regal authority returning in full, and it would have succeeded, if not for him. Rhea's gaze shifted to Arlen, and her eyes narrowed. The suspicion returned instantly. A human. Here. He is the one who crashed the party, Seraphine said. I heard the explosion and the broadcast, Rhea said, an embarrassed flush rising on her gray-blue skin. About the warranties. That was my artificial intelligence, Arlen said dryly. He thinks he is funny. It was effective, Rhea admitted. It drew half the patrol away from the dais. She stood up, her rifle still held at a low ready. Who is he? He says he is a salvager, Seraphine said. His name is Arlen Drake. Before Rhea could question him further, the second figure stepped out of the shadows. She was an older Zavari, draped in the dark, simple robes of a scholar. She held no weapon, but her eyes held an authority that was, in its own way, more formidable than Rhea's rifle. He is telling the truth, Captain, the scholar said, her voice soft. He is not what we expected. Archivist Myri, Seraphine said, bowing her head slightly. You are safe. As are you, child, Myri said. Her gaze found Arlen's. You have caused quite a stir. Master Drake, Kareth has locked down the city. He is broadcasting that you are a human assassin, sent to murder the princess, and that his forces bravely interrupted you. So he is blaming me for his own public execution, Arlen said, exasperated. That is efficient. It is his way, Rhea said, her voice filled with contempt. He controls the Warrior Council by twisting every truth into a weapon. He has been doing it for months, selling our world piece by piece to an off-world human corporation. Arlen's head snapped up. Corporation. What corporation? Mary answered. A weapons manufacturer. They call themselves the Kratos Group. They supply Kareth with arms. And in return, he gives them mining rights to our most sacred ancestral lands. Arlen's blood went cold. Kratos. The same arms dealer that had supplied the insurgents on Cygnus 6. The same corporation whose illegal gravity well trap had annihilated his team. This was not a coincidence. This was a pattern. The singularity that had grabbed his ship, it was not just a human signature. It was a Kratos signature. They had not just pulled him into a war. They had pulled him into his war. Captain, Witt's voice, suddenly crackled in his ear, sharp with alarm. Multiple squads are descending on your position. They bypassed my rodent. They are very rude. And they are using advanced tracking, human-made. Kratos, Arlen growled. We have to move, Rhea said, already turning. Myri has a safe house in the old Spire 9 ruins. We can regroup there. What is the plan? Arlen asked, falling into step beside her as they began to run. A strange collection of fugitives, a princess, a captain, a scholar, and a salvager. The plan was to get the princess out of the city and transmit a signal to the loyalist fleets in the outer system, Rhea explained, her breathing even as she ran. But Karth has the ether tower locked down. It controls all planetary comms. And all orbital defenses, Arlen thought, his mind racing. And, likely, the gravity well generators. First, we get clear, Arlen said. They were in a wider tunnel now, a main thoroughfare. Behind them, Arlen could hear the heavy, booted footsteps of Karth's soldiers. They were close. This way, Rhea pointed to a smaller junction. No, Arlen said suddenly, stopping. He pointed to a different tunnel. That way. Rhea looked at him, annoyed. That is a dead end. It leads to an old ventilation shaft that has been sealed for a century. Just trust me, Arlen said. We do not have time for this, Salvager Rhea snapped. He is right, Captain, Mary said, her soft voice cutting through the tension. Do as he says, Rhea looked at the scholar, stunned, but she nodded. This way. Quickly, they ran down the dead-end tunnel. As Arlen passed a junction, he accidentally stumbled, his pack snagging on a heavy, corroded support strut. He grunted, yanking it free, clumsy. He muttered. Rhea shot him a look of pure disbelief, but did not slow down. They reached the end, a massive, rusted fan, sealed tight, a sealed shaft. Rhea spat. I told you. Wait for it, Arlen said. Behind them, the shouts of the soldiers grew louder. They were in the main thoroughfare. Then came a deep, groaning sound, a crash, and screams. What was that? Seraphine asked, her hand on the hilt of a small blade Arlen had not seen before. That, Arlen said, was a 100-ton support strut that was, apparently, under a great deal of stress. That junction is now problematic. For them, Rhea Selen stared at him. Her eyes traveled from his face to his tool pack and back. That was fortunate timing. Salvager, she said, her voice slow, all trace of mockery gone. I am just clumsy, Arlen said with a shrug. They heard digging and more shouts. They had bought time. Arlen turned to the massive fan. Okay. This, I can work with. He used his cutter again, but this time with surgical precision, melting the rusted gears, not the blades. With a combined push from him and Rhea, the massive fan groaned and turned, opening a gap just wide enough to slip through. One by one, they climbed into the darkness of the Spire 9 ruins. As they moved, they passed a small enclave of Zavari civilians, huddled in the dark, their faces pale with terror. Kareth's troops had been through here, and the place was a wreck. Rhea, focused on the mission, started to move past them. Arlen stopped. He saw a young Zavari child, no older than 5, crying silently. His hand caught under a piece of fallen masonry. We cannot stop, Rhea hissed. Arlen ignored her. He walked over to the child, his movements slow, unthreatening. He knelt down. Hey there, he said softly. That looks heavy. He spoke in Terran Standard, but his tone was universal. He gently began to work the debris loose. The child's mother watched him, her eyes wide with fear. Not of him, but of the soldiers who might return. Arlen, we must go, Seraphine said, her voice urgent. Almost got it, Arlen said. He freed the child's hand, which was bruised but not broken. He pulled a ration bar from his pouch and pressed it into the child's good hand. There you go. He stood up and nodded to the mother, then rejoined the group, his face impassive. They walked in silence for a few moments. Seraphine's eyes were fixed on Arlen. She had been raised to believe that humans were greedy, selfish, and opportunistic, the source of her world's slow decay. She had just watched this strange, contradictory man risk all of their lives. Not for a princess, but for a common child. It was a profound, human value that resonated with a part of her she thought had been extinguished. They finally emerged into a massive, cavernous space, a spire that had collapsed inward, creating a sheltered, hidden valley of ruins. The shattered roof allowed moonlight to filter in, painting the scene in shades of silver and black. "We are safe here," Rhea said, posting herself by the entrance, her rifle scanning the darkness. For now. Mary led them to a small, dry alcove where a few supplies were stashed. Seraphine sat down, her whole body trembling, the adrenaline finally fading. Mary lit a small, flameless, chemical lamp. The archivist turned to Seraphine, her old eyes gentle. She reached out and touched Seraphine's arm, right where the covenant mark had appeared. "It is true, then," Mary whispered, her voice full of wonder. "The ancient bond. The covenant has chosen." She then looked up, her gaze finding Arlen, who was checking his plasma cutter's energy levels, his back to them. "But the old texts were always clear," Mary murmured, almost to herself, a new, dawning realization in her eyes. "The bond is a mirror. It reflects both ways." Seraphine followed her gaze to the human's back. Mary's voice was barely audible. "The covenant may have chosen, child. But the chosen is not just one." The dim, chemical light of Mary's lamp cast long shadows in the alcove, turning the ruins of Spire 9 into a crypt. Rhea Solen was gone, vanished into the tunnels to make contact with her scattered cells. Mary was asleep, her breathing a soft, steady rhythm. Seraphine was watching Arlen. He sat apart, his back against a crumbling wall, his toolkit open in his lap. He was not resting. He was working. His wristcom was propped against a rock, its blue optic casting a tiny, focused beam of light. "Run the signature analysis again." "Wit," Arlen murmured, his voice too low to carry. "Captain, I have run it 9 times." Wit's voice replied, a whisper in his earbud. "The data is fragmented, sourced from the microseconds before our pod's sensors were slagged. The result remains the same. The gravity well generator was human, Kratos Group, design signature, Admiral Hargate." Arlen's hands tightened on the diagnostic tool he was cleaning. The name hit him like a physical blow, a cold fist in his gut. Admiral Hargate, the architect of the Cygnus 6 blockade, the man who had sold the faulty Kratos-grade traps to the insurgents. Traps Arlen's team had been sent to clear. The man who had watched, from a safe orbital distance, as those traps malfunctioned and vaporized 34 good soldiers. Arlen's friends, his family. "Are you certain?" Arlen's voice was flat, all trace of the mechanic gone. "The energy modulation, the specific frequency decay, it is his signature. Arlen, he built it to fail, just like on Cygnus." Arlen closed his eyes. The smoke, the screams, the sudden, silent void where his command ship had been. He had been the lone survivor, thrown clear in an inspection pod, a tactical architect who had failed to see the most basic, brutal trap. The guilt had driven him here, to the edge of the galaxy, to a life of picking apart junk, so he would never build anything again. And now, the man responsible was here, partnered with a local warlord, using the same tactics, killing the same way. A cold, dark purpose settled over him. It was not just an occupational hazard anymore. This was not about saving a princess. This was about balancing a ledger that had been bleeding red for 6 years. But he felt the old training, the discipline he had drilled into his team, rise to meet the rage, save first, secure the civilians. The objective comes before the personal. Revenge is just a failed form of justice. "Wit," he said, his voice level again. "Find Hargate. I want to know everything he has touched on this planet. I want to know where he sleeps. A laudable goal, Captain. However, I am currently running on a fractured network connection from your wrist, hiding behind 3 layers of Zaviri firewalls. Perhaps we could start with something simpler, like not dying in the next 5 minutes, Argent," Arlen thought, letting out a slow breath. He was right. First, the objective. He opened his eyes. Seraphine was still watching him. Her gaze was intense, analytical. "You are not a mechanic," she said, her voice quiet in the small space. Arlen met her gaze. He did not bother to lie, not fully. "I am a mechanic. I just have a complicated employment history. You are a soldier." "I was," he corrected. "A long time ago. Now, I take things apart." He held up the molecular scanner. "This is what I do." "You are doing it again," she said, a flicker of irritation in her eyes. Hiding behind that dry humor. "You did not just stumble and drop a support strut on that patrol. That was a calculated, timed demolition. It was a rusty strut, Your Highness." "I did it a favor. Stop calling me that," she snapped. "My title is a target. My name is Seraphine, and I need to know who you are." Before Arlen could answer, Rhea Solen reappeared, materializing from the shadows like a ghost. Her blue-gray skin was slick with sweat, her face grim. "It is worse than I thought. Kareth has the city in a chokehold. My units are scattered, hiding in cellars, posing as civilians. They are too afraid to move without a direct order from the Empress. And the Empress is gone." "She is not gone," Seraphine said, her voice sharp. "She is in seclusion, not captured." "It makes no difference," Rhea argued, checking the charge on her phaser rifle. "To the people, to the army. She is silent. Kareth is the only voice they hear. He is broadcasting on all channels, calling you a traitor, claiming you conspired with this human to destabilize the state. Then we must broadcast, too," Seraphine said. Rhea and Arlen both looked at her. "Your Highness," Rhea said, her voice laced with, "This is insane patience. We are 3 people and 1 mechanic. In a hole in the ground. Kareth controls the ether tower. He controls the entire planetary grid." "So we do not aim for the ether tower," Seraphine said, standing up. She was pacing now, the energy of a caged leader finally breaking free. "That is a fortress. We aim for a local node, a city-level broadcast station, Spire 4, the old archive district. It has its own independent power source." Rhea shook her head. "To what end we send one message. He cuts us off, and his troops pin us down. It is a tactical dead end. It is not a tactical move," Seraphine said. "It is a cultural one. You are thinking like a soldier." "Rhea, Kareth rules because he defines our culture. He says tradition demands victory. He says I am a prize to be won or killed. We must change the definition." She looked at Mari, who had awakened and was listening intently. "Mary, the Covenant. The mark on my arm. Tell them what you told me." Mary rose, her movement slow and deliberate. "For centuries, the warlords have taught that the protective covenant was a bond of ownership. A Zavari warrior protecting his claim. It is a lie. I have spent my life translating the old texts, the ones from before the warlords." Her eyes burned with a cold, academic fire. "The covenant was never about possession. It was a symbiotic bond, a two-way street. It was a promise. I shall protect you, and in doing so, you shall protect me. It was an accord of mutual respect, not subjugation. It was first forged not between 2 Zavari, but between a Zavari and a human traveler, a partnership." All eyes in the alcove turned to Arlen. He felt like he was on display, a specimen in a jar. "That is why it answered you," Mary said to him. "The bond was never broken. It was just waiting for the other half of the equation." A heavy silence fell. Arlen was the missing piece, the accidental catalyst. "So that is our message," Seraphine said, her voice ringing with newfound conviction. "We liberate the Spire 4 node. We broadcast Myri's translations. We tell the people the truth. That to be protected is not to be a prize. That to be a protector is not to be an owner. We give them a new story. Arlen saw the plan now. It was not just a plan. It was an idea. And ideas were far more dangerous than weapons. Rhea was frowning. A speech. You want to risk our lives for a speech? No, Arlen said, speaking for the first time. The pieces were clicking into place in his mind, the old tactical part of him lighting up. She wants to start a counterinsurgency. She is right. You cannot win a firefight against Kareth. But you can win an information war. You cannot take the Ether Tower. But you can hijack a local node. He looked at Rhea. It is a solid tactical move. While she and Mary prepare the broadcast, you can use the node to send your encrypted, high-speed signal to your loyalist fleet. A simple rally and wait order. They will hear it. It is two objectives. One stone. Rhea's eyes widened slightly. She had not considered that. Arlen turned to Seraphine. But he will be waiting. That node will be defended. That, Rhea said, a slow, predatory smile spreading across her face, is the part I am good at. No, Arlen said, zipping up his tool pack. That is the part we are all good at. You get us in, Captain. I will handle the welcoming committee. Rhea looked at his pack. With what? Are you going to bore them with warranty claims? Something like that, Arlen said. They moved through the broken city like phantoms. The ruins of Spire 9 gave way to the narrow, rocky alleys of the old quarry district. A maze of stone that separated them from Spire 4. Rhea led. Her movements economical. Her rifle always ready. Seraphine and Mary followed, and Arlen took the rear. He was not just watching their back. He was working. As they passed a junction, he would trip again, spilling a small pouch of dark, conductive dust into a puddle. You are very clumsy, Seraphine observed from ahead. Terrible balance. Arlen agreed, catching up. He paused at a narrow choke point between two towering, moss-covered boulders. He quickly unspooled a length of high-tensile microfilament, a cable he used for lifting engine blocks, and secured it ankle-high between the two rocks, coating it with mud to hide its sheen. And what is that? Rhea asked, watching him. Just tying my shoe, Arlen said. He continued this for an hour, repurposing his salvage tools into a series of ingenious, non-lethal traps. A leaky drum of bioluminescent oil, native to Zavari, was punctured and rolled into an indentation. It was highly flammable and incredibly slick. A set of electrical relays he pulled from a dead power conduit were wired to a pressure plate, set to discharge a high-voltage, low-ampere shock. He was not a soldier, he reminded himself. He was just a very creative mechanic. Wit. He whispered into his comm. How is our customer service call going, Captain, a pleasure. Wit's voice chirped in his ear, the AI clearly enjoying himself. I have successfully integrated into the Spire 4 broadcast mainframe. Their firewalls are adorable, very rustic. I am currently disguised as a predictive maintenance algorithm for the ventilation system. Can you get us access? Better. I have access. I am monitoring their patrol comms, and I have prepared a special welcome. Kareth's men are lazy. They are broadcasting all their internal security codes in the clear. Good. Get ready to make some noise. We are 5 minutes out. They reached the base of Spire 4. It was a squat, heavily fortified building. Not a spire at all. 2 guards in Kareth's bone-white armor stood at the main entrance. Rhea unslung her rifle. I can take them. No need, Arlen said. He touched his comm. Wit. Now. Suddenly. The comm link on the lead guard's belt shrieked. He fumbled with it, lifting it to his helmet. This is Patrol 9. What is? Greetings, valued warrior. Wit's voice boomed from the small speaker, loud enough to echo in the alley. We are calling to inform you that your recent attempt to execute a princess has been logged as unsatisfactory. This is a severe violation of our customer service standards. The two guards stared at the comm device in horror. To apologize for this inconvenience, Wit continued cheerfully. We have activated the station's automated fire suppression system. Please stand by for a complimentary, high-pressure foam bath. With a heavy hiss, wall-mounted nozzles above the door exploded, dousing the two guards in thick, sticky, fire-retardant foam. They slipped, cursed, and fell, completely blinded and immobilized. Rhea stared, her mouth open. Your AI is terrifying. He has his moments, Arlen said, pushing past the sputtering guards. Mary, Seraphine, find the broadcast room. Rhea, cover them. I will go. Make sure no one else is inconvenienced. As the women ran down the main corridor, Arlen headed for the rear access ramp, where he knew the main garrison would be coming. He did not have to wait long. A heavy door burst open, and a squad of 6 warriors, alerted by the commotion, charged up the ramp. The first two hit the bioluminescent oil slick. Their feet went out from under them. They crashed into each other like bowling pins, sliding back down the ramp in a heap of flailing limbs and curses. The next 4, seeing the danger, slowed down, stepping carefully. They raised their plasma rifles. The lead warrior stepped on the pressure plate. A massive, harmless, but very loud electrical crack discharged. The conductive dust Arlen had scattered on the damp floor lit up, channeling the shock across the plates of their armor, shorting out their weapon systems with a sad thwump. They stood there, holding useless, smoking rifles. I believe, Arlen said, stepping out of the shadows, holding his heavy-duty plasma cutter, that you gentlemen have voided your warranty. While Rhea secured the perimeter, Seraphine and Mary found the broadcast room. It was small, automated. Mary, her hands trembling with excitement, slotted her data crystal into the console. Wit, Seraphine said to a nearby comm panel. Can you give me the city? Giving you the city? Highness, Wit replied, his voice now respectful. You are live on all local channels. Speak your truth. Seraphine took a deep breath. She looked at the small camera, her face no longer that of a fugitive, but of a leader. People of Koresh, she began, her voice clear and strong. This is Seraphine Kale. I am alive. You have been told that I am a traitor, that I consorted with an alien to destroy our world. That is a lie. The warlord Kareth tried to execute me to secure his power, and he was stopped. She stepped aside, pulling Mary into the frame. You have been told that our traditions demand victory through violence. That, too, is a lie. Archivist Mary will now show you the truth. Mary spoke, and her words were like thunder, translating the ancient texts, showing the images of the original covenant. Then Seraphine stepped back. I was saved by a human, not an assassin, a man who protected me, not as a prize, but as a person. The covenant is a partnership. To protect is a duty, not a right of ownership. Kareth has sold our world to human corporations for weapons, while I have found an ally in a single human mechanic. The message looped, blasting out across the city, on public screens, on private comms, in a district not far from Spire 4. A group of civilians huddled in a cellar, listening to the broadcast on a handheld. Above them, they heard a Zavri patrol. The door burst open, but it was not Kareth's men. It was Rhea, Arlen, and Seraphine, their faces grim. We are clearing this building, Rhea announced. The shadow shield is here. The name was born in that moment, a whisper from a civilian who saw the human and the princess fighting side by side to protect them. The rumor spread faster than the broadcast a human ghost and the princess, a shadow shield for the people. The victory was short-lived. By the time they returned to the Spire 9 ruins, the city was in an uproar. But Kareth was a master of narrative. He did not try to deny the broadcast. He twisted it. That evening, his image appeared on every screen. He stood on the balcony of his fortress, flanked by his council. "The human stain has corrupted my daughter," he roared. "He has used her, twisted her mind, and defiled our most sacred traditions. He has admitted to his crimes, hiding behind the skirts of a deluded child." This was bad, Arlen thought, his stomach tightening. "But our traditions have an answer," Kareth bellowed. "I, Warlord Kareth, invoke the Thathi Vindication, the right of cleansing. The alien, Arlen Drake, has offered a public offense, and he must answer it in the circle." Seraphine looked at Mari, her face pale. "What is that? What is the vindication?" Mary's hand went to her mouth. "It is an archaic law, a public trial by combat, a duel to the death. It is non-negotiable." On the screen, Kareth smiled, his mandibles splitting wide. "He will face our champion. He will face the man who has never known defeat. He will face Vorax." The camera panned to a figure standing beside Kareth, a giant Zavari, easily 8 feet tall. He was not just armored, he was armor, his body encased in the polished, black bones of some great beast. Vorax stepped forward and slammed his fist into his chest, a sound like a hammer hitting an anvil. "Well," Arlen said quietly, watching the giant on the screen. "He looks friendly." "Arlen," Seraphine said, her voice shaking, "you cannot. This is not a fight. It is an execution. Vorax is a monster." "If I refuse," Arlen said, his eyes never leaving the screen. "What happens?" "He wins," Rhea said, her voice flat. "By tradition. If you refuse the vindication, you are admitting guilt. He will execute you on sight, and her, too. He will claim the stain was so deep you were too cowardly to face the cleansing. He will have just justified his entire war." Arlen looked at the monster on the screen, then at Seraphine, then at the tool pack at his feet. "Wit," Arlen said to his comm, "run an analysis on Zavari bone armor. I need to know its tensile strength and its melting point. This is a very, very bad idea." "Captain," Wit replied. "I know," Arlen said. "It is a day that ends in Y. The Red Ash Arena was a raw, red-barked wound in the heart of Koresh. It was an ancient place, dug deep into the bedrock, open to the fractured sky. 10,000 Zavari were packed into the steep, stone seats, their voices a unified, bloodthirsty roar. This was the center of Kareth's power, the place where his philosophy of rule, might, tradition, and brutal spectacle was made manifest, high in a reinforced tribunal box. Seraphine Kale sat as a prisoner, not a princess. She wore the ceremonial white robes of the accused, a stark contrast to her pale, defiant face. Beside her, Myri sat, her eyes closed, her lips moving in a silent prayer, not to the Zavari gods, but perhaps for a new one, in a separate, high-security box across the arena. Warlord Kareth leaned forward, his massive frame draped in black and crimson. He was reveling in this. His mandibles split in a wide, satisfied grin. He had forced this. He had turned Arlen's clever counter-broadcast into a tool for his own ends. The human would be ripped apart. The princess would be broken, and his own power would be cemented in the red ash. A horn, deep and mournful, echoed across the circle. The crowd roared as a massive iron gate ground open. Vorax entered. He was a monster, 8 feet of bone and muscle, encased in the night-black, chitinous armor that Arlen had only seen in Wit's database. It was the exoskeleton of a Grax Leviathan, a beast supposedly extinct, its surface impervious to standard phasers and, as Wit had dryly noted, most forms of common sense. He carried no high-tech weapon, just a massive spear, its shaft thick as a man's arm, its tip a jagged piece of sharpened black bone. Vorax slammed the butt of his spear into the sand, and the impact shuddered through the stands. He roared, and the crowd roared back. Another, smaller gate opened on the opposite side. Arlen Drake walked out. The roar of the crowd died, replaced by a wave of confused, hissing laughter. He wore no armor. He had no cape, no sigil. He was dressed in his stained, patched, off-white utility coveralls, the same ones he wore to fix a leaky plasma conduit. His boots were scuffed. He carried no spear, no rifle. On his back was his heavy tool pack. On his hip was his belt, heavy with scanners, wrenches, and his plasma cutter. He looked like what he was, a mechanic who had taken a wrong turn and ended up at a blood sport. He walked to the center of the arena, squinting against the harsh Zavary sunlight. He dropped his tool pack to the sand with a heavy thud. From the stands, the hissing turned to outright mockery. They threw refuse. A piece of dried fruit bounced off Arlen's shoulder. He did not flinch. In her box, Seraphine's hands clenched so hard, her nails drew blood. She was going to watch him die. This was her fault. Her gamble. Kareth gave the signal. The horn sounded again. Vorax did not wait. He lowered his head and charged. He was a biological freight train, his heavy, bone-clad boots kicking up clouds of red ash. Arlen stood his ground, his hands at his sides. He watched the giant close the distance. 10 meters. 5. At the last possible second. Arlen took one, casual step to his left. Vorax, his momentum absolute, thundered past. He could not stop for half the arena, plowing a furrow in the sand as he tried to slow himself, roaring in frustration. Arlen had not moved, save for that single step. He was breathing calmly. The crowd was silent. Vorax turned, his face, visible behind the bone helm, contorted in rage. He had been made to look foolish. He pounded his chest and charged again. Again. Arlen waited. Again. He took a simple, economical step aside. Vorax roared past. This was not a fight. It was a matador and a bull, but the matador was not even armed. "He is playing with him," a Zavary noble in the stands hissed in disbelief. "He is going to be killed," another replied, but his voice was uncertain. Vorax stopped, breathing heavily. He was smart enough to know this was a tactic. He would not be fooled again. He began to circle Arlen, his massive spear held at the ready. Arlen, in turn, began to walk slowly backward, luring the champion toward a specific patch of undisturbed sand near the arena wall. Vorax saw the retreat. He saw weakness. He charged. This time, Arlen did not dodge. He dropped, rolling backward, and came up near his tool pack. Vorax, expecting another sidestep, was perfectly positioned. He slammed his boot down on the patch of sand Arlen had been aiming for. A cloud of fine, dark dust puffed up, invisible against the red ash. Vorax, in the middle of a battle roar, inhaled it. He stopped. His roar turned into a wet, choking cough. His secondary respiratory membranes, located on his neck just below the jawline, flared in agony. The dust, a finely ground, metallic byproduct from Arlen's salvage, was like inhaling microscopic glass. Vorax dropped his spear, clutching his throat, his eyes wide with pained confusion. He was suffocating. The arena was in shock. What sorcery was this? Arlen did not press the attack. He just watched, his face impassive. In her box, Seraphine was on her feet, her hand over her mouth. Mary was staring, her old eyes wide. "He is deconstructing him," she whispered. Vorax finally managed to clear his passages, vomiting a thick, gray sludge onto the red sand. He was weakened, his breathing ragged, but he was alive, and he was furious. The rage was absolute. He grabbed his spear and advanced on Arlen, not charging, but stalking, his killing intent a palpable thing. "You, human, filth," he rasped. Arlen, in response, grabbed his plasma cutter from his belt. The crowd saw the weapon, a tiny, handheld tool, and laughed again, the tension broken. Vorax grinned, his confidence returning. The human was pathetic. "Are you?" Vorax spat. "We'll die, slowly." He lunged. A surprisingly fast spear thrust aimed at Arlen's heart. Arlen, again, did not move to dodge. Instead, he leaned into the attack, his plasma cutter held high. He did not try to block the spear. He activated the cutter, its needle of white-hot energy hissing to life, and aimed it at the patch of bioluminescent oil he had spilled from a canister while setting up his pack. The oil had been slicked onto a patch of sand that Vorax was now standing on. The plasma arc did not hit Vorax. It hit the oil. With a sound like a tearing sheet, the entire patch of ground erupted in a column of blue-green, chemical flame. Vorax roared, this time in pure, unadulterated terror. He was standing in the middle of an inferno. The fire was not hot enough to melt his bone armor, but it was hot enough to ignite the fine hairs on his exposed skin, to set the leather straps of his armor smoldering. He leaped back, batting at the flames on his body, his spear forgotten. He was a towering, smoking, panicked giant. The fire burned out as quickly as it had come, leaving him scorched, his armor blackened, his pride non-existent. The arena was silent, utterly, completely silent. 10,000 Zavari, raised on a culture of brutal, head-to-head combat, had just watched their greatest champion be suffocated and set on fire by a small man with a toolbox, who had yet to strike a single blow. Vorax was on his knees, his breathing shallow, his great strength useless. He was beaten. Arlen walked toward him. He did not have his plasma cutter. He picked up the massive, discarded spear. He hefted it. It was heavy, but he could manage. This was it, the moment of the kill. The crowd leaned forward as one. Kareth was on his feet, his smile gone, his face a mask of cold calculation. Even he had not expected this. Seraphine watched, her heart hammering. She saw the choice in Arlen's shoulders. He could end it. He could drive the spear home and win the vindication. He would be a hero, a giant killer. It was the Zavari way. But he would be a killer. Arlen looked at the cowering, defeated giant. He looked at the hushed, expectant crowd. He looked up, his gaze finding Seraphine's, a silent question passing between them. She gave a small, almost imperceptible shake of her head. "Do not become them." Arlen's gaze hardened. He turned from Seraphine, looking directly at Kareth in his high tribunal. He raised the spear. The crowd gasped, and with a roar of his own, Arlen Drake slammed the point of the spear deep into the red ash, inches from Vorax's head. The shaft quivered, a final, definitive statement. Vorax stared at the spear, then at Arlen, his mind unable to process the act of mercy. Arlen turned to the crowd. He pointed a finger, not at Vorax, but at Seraphine's tribunal box. His voice, amplified by the arena's natural acoustics, carried to every seat. "She is not a prize." The words hit the arena like a physical blow, and the silence shattered. It was not applause. It was a riot. A third of the stadium roared in approval, a new, strange sound of hope. A third roared in fury, screaming blasphemy and insult. They had been denied their blood. The final third was simply, utterly confused, arguing with their neighbors, their entire worldview tilted on its axis. Arlen Drake had not just defeated their champion. He had, in one move, invalidated their entire blood sport. Kareth's face was purple. He had been publicly humiliated. He had lost control of the narrative. But he was a master. He stood, his hands raised, his voice booming over the chaos. "Enough." Slowly, the noise died down. "The human speaks a strange truth," Kareth said, his voice dripping with false magnanimity. The vindication is satisfied. He has won by his own strange, merciful custom. A custom I respect, the crowd murmured. This was unexpected. By the traditions, Kareth continued. He has shamed Vorax. He has won. And as the winner, he is my honored guest, he smiled. Escort my guests, all of them. Take them to the guest wing. See to their comfort. Arlen knew a death sentence when he heard one. The guards entered the arena, their weapons raised. They did not bind Arlen, but they surrounded him, their phasers hot. Rhea and Mary were brought down from their box, their faces grim, and shoved in line with Seraphine. A clever speech, Salvager, Rhea muttered as they were marched into the dark tunnels beneath the stands. You just talked us all into a dark hole. It was the only move, Arlen said. His shoulders slumped. The adrenaline was gone, leaving only a bone-deep weariness. You have given them a new idea, Mary whispered, her eyes bright. That is more powerful than any spear. It is also, Seraphine said, her voice shaking. Going to get us all killed. They were herded into a long, stone corridor, lit only by flickering chemical torches. The cheering and roaring of the crowd was a distant, muffled sound. The captain of the guard, a hulking Zaveri with Kareth's personal sigil on his armor, stopped. He turned. The warlord is disappointed, the captain snarled. He finds your mercy to be a personal insult. He has ordered us to clean the stain. A tragic tunnel collapse. The 8 guards raised their rifles. There was no way out. It has been, Arlen said quietly, an interesting day. Before the guards could fire, a voice came from the shadows at the far end of the tunnel. I agree, but it is not over. Captain Rhea Selen stepped out, a heavy-duty phaser rifle in her hands. She was not alone. At least a dozen Zaveri in the battered blue armor of the Imperial Honor Guard emerged from alcoves and side tunnels, their weapons trained on Kareth's men. Captain, Rhea said to the stunned guard, you are relieved of your post, permanently. The firefight was over in 10 seconds. Rhea's team moved with a professional brutality that was terrifying to behold. Kareth's personal guard, so arrogant a moment before, were unconscious or dead. Rhea strode over to Arlen, her face grim. My team secured the tunnels while you were playing in the sand. I figured Kareth would not honor a draw. She checked Arlen for injuries, her movements rough, impersonal. You are a fool, Arlen Drake. You had him. You could have taken his head. That is his way, Arlen said, wincing as she checked a bruise on his ribs. Not mine. We are leaving, now. Kareth has the entire city guard on high alert, Rhea said, tossing him a discarded phaser. Try not to be so merciful. With this, they ran, a small island of fugitives in a sea of enemies. As they reached a junction, Mary grabbed Seraphine's arm, pulling her into a small alcove as the team laid down covering fire. The old archivist looked at her princess, her face etched with a terrible, ancient sadness. What is it, Mary? Seraphine asked, her heart pounding. He has done it, Mary whispered, her voice trembling. He has turned history. He showed them that mercy is stronger than bone. Then why do you look so afraid? Mary met her gaze. Because the old text said this day would come, the day the covenant was reforged in a new image. But the price for such a turn, is always paid in the blood of the one who turned the wheel. They were running again, but this time, it was not a retreat. It was an assault. Rhea's handful of loyalists had secured a new, temporary base in the steam-filled tunnels beneath the old foundry district, a place of cold forges and deep shadows. Arlen sat apart, his face illuminated by the holographic schematics projected from his comm. He had not slept. He had been sifting through the data Ria's team had stolen during their escape, cross-referencing it with what Wit had pulled from the Spire 4 node. "It is not just a broadcast center," Arlen said, his voice flat. The others, Ria, Seraphine, and Mary, gathered around him. "I thought it was, but it is the brain." He pointed to the central spire on the schematic, the Ether Tower, the tallest, most fortified structure in Koresh. It controls the planetary defense grid. It controls all long-range communications. And he zoomed in on a deeply buried sublevel. It controls the gravity well generators. All of them. A heavy silence fell. "The mines that hit your ship," Seraphine said, her voice barely a whisper. "The mines that are currently blockading this planet," Ria added, her arms crossed. "The mines that gave me this," Arlen growled, his gaze fixed on the schematic. He traced the signature. It was human. It was Kratos Group. It was Hargate. This tower is the linchpin. It is Kareth's power, and it is Hargate's weapon. They are holding this entire city hostage. We take the tower. We take the mines. We end the war." Ria shook her head, her mandibles clicking in negation. "That is a fortress. Arlen. It is not Spire 4. It has a garrison of 500. Bone armor. Heavy plasma. We have 12. And you. So we do not assault it," Arlen said. He looked up, his eyes cold and clear, the mechanic replaced fully by the tactical architect. "An assault is what they expect. We execute a precision strike. It is a heist, not a battle." He partitioned the schematic into 3 clear objectives. "Ria, you are the distraction. You and your team. You will hit the main entrance with everything you have. A fast, loud, brutal diversion. You are not trying to win. You are trying to pull the entire garrison down to the lower levels. Make them think the Shadow Shield is trying to break in the front door." Ria's grim face broke into a fierce, predatory smile. "I can be loud." Arlen pointed to a different section. "Seraphine. Mary. The broadcast core. It is on the central level, shielded. While Ria is ringing the dinner bell, you two slip in through a secondary access port. Mary, you will get Seraphine access. Seraphine, you will finish the speech you started. You will give the city the protective declaration, but this time, you will do it from the very heart of Kareth's power." Mary nodded, her ancient eyes bright. "A declaration from the Ether Tower. It would be definitive." "And you?" Seraphine asked. Her gaze locked on Arlen. "Where will you be?" Arlen's finger traced a thin, almost invisible line up the side of the tower. "The navigation hub, the top floor. That is where the gravity emitters are controlled. It is where Hargate will be. And according to this, it is connected to the central reactor by a shielded maintenance shaft. It is a long, hard climb. And it is all mine." "That is insane," Ria said. All humor gone. "The 3 objectives are miles apart. If one of us fails, the others are trapped. It is a suicide run." "It is a plan," Arlen corrected. "And it is the only one we have." The Ether Tower was not built of stone. It was a Zaveri marvel, a spiraling structure of bioformed, living alloy. The maintenance shaft Arlen was climbing was not a metal tube, but a pulsating, arterial column. It was dark, suffocatingly hot, and the walls were slick with a strange, viscous lubricant. "You are making terrible time, Captain," Wit's voice whispered in his earbud. "My projections suggest that, at this rate, the heat will cook you in your suit before you reach the halfway point." "Thanks for the encouragement, Wit," Arlen grunted, jamming a climbing piton into a pulsing fold of the alloy. The wall squirmed around the metal, as if in protest. "How are the others?" Ria has commenced her loud operation. "I am detecting multiple explosions at the main entrance." She is very enthusiastic. Myri and Seraphine have breached the secondary port. So far. All according to your optimistic plan. Arlen continued to climb. The heat was blistering. His coveralls were soaked. He was moving through the guts of the building. A virus in the system. Stop, Whit said, his voice suddenly sharp. Arlen froze, hanging by one hand. Internal sensor sweep. 30 seconds. Whit warned. Jam it. Arlen panted. I cannot. It is a closed-loop bioscanner. It is not looking for intruders. It is monitoring the tower's own biological functions. It will register you as an anomaly. A very soon-to-be-dead anomaly. Arlen looked up. He could see it. A shimmering field of pale green light descending the shaft, scanning every surface. It is a pulse, Arlen observed, his mind racing. Not a solid field. Give me the frequency. 2.4 seconds between pulses, Whit said. You cannot possibly. I can, Arlen said. He began to climb. A desperate, frantic scramble. Arlen, it is too fast. It is not about speed. Whit. It is about rhythm. The green pulse swept down. Arlen did not try to outrun it. He jammed his foot into a crevice, anchored himself, and, as the light passed over him, he flattened his body, holding his breath. The scanner hit him. He felt a strange, tingling sensation, as if his cells were being counted. Anomaly detected, Whit said, his voice tight with panic. Security protocols are... Wait, Arlen said. The light passed. The protocol is diverting coolant to the infected area. Arlen, you are about to be power washed with reactor fluid. Just keep climbing. Arlen grunted, moving faster. The scanner pulse now rising from below him. He was 20 feet higher when the second pulse came. He repeated the maneuver. Flatten. Wait. Anomaly persistent. Whit announced. The system is confused. It is flagging you as a benign growth. It is ignoring you. Well, I will be. You have bored the tower into accepting you. See, Whit Arlen panted, hauling himself over the final ledge. I am a charming guy. He sliced through the hatch with his plasma cutter and tumbled into the navigation hub. The room was the opposite of the shaft. It was cold, sterile, and silent. A bubble of human technology grafted onto the alien tower. A single, curved window offered a godlike view of the burning city below. Admiral Hargate was standing at that window, watching Rhea's diversion with detached interest. Architect Drake, Hargate said, his voice smooth, not even turning. You are late. I calculated your arrival time to be 3 minutes ago. The biopulse must have slowed you down. A fascinating, if inefficient, security system. Arlen got to his feet, his hand on his plasma cutter. You knew I was coming. Of course, Hargate said, finally turning. He was immaculate in his Kratos uniform, his face a mask of aristocratic calm. I have been monitoring your Shadow Shield operation ever since the arena. Your mercy was so theatrical, so human. It was your signature, Drake. Just as those gravity mines are mine. Cygnus 6, Arlen said, his voice a low growl. You killed my team. I stabilized a region, Hargate corrected, walking toward the central console. Your team was a liability. They were bleeding hearts, just like you. They believed in trust, in protective covenants. I believe in order, and order is built on fear. Fear is the only constant, Drake. The only reliable tool for governance. Look at the order you have built, Arlen said, gesturing to the city, where the smoke of Rhea's attack was rising. It is chaos. It is contained chaos, Hargate said, his hand hovering over the console. Kara thinks he is in charge. He is not. I am this tower. It is my hand on the throat of this entire planet. And you just climbed right into my fist. I am not here to fight you. Hargate. I am here to shut you down. Hargate laughed, a dry, cold sound. And I am here to finish a job I started 6 years ago. He lunged for the console. But Arlen was not aiming for Hargate. He was aiming for the room. His eyes darted around. Magnetic anchors holding the window. Power conduits. Wit, Arlen whispered. Give me a low-frequency pulse. Target my cutter. Hargate's hand hit the alarm. Security deck 99. Kill him. As the Admiral turned back, Arlen raised his plasma cutter, but he did not fire it. He just activated the arc. The high-pitched whine filling the room. It was a tuning fork. He slammed the cutter against a heavy, magnetic window anchor. The pulse from his pack hit it at the same moment. The 1-ton anchor, suddenly supercharged, ripped free from the wall, trailing sparks. Hargate dodged as the massive piece of metal flew across the room, smashing into the console he had been standing at. Crude. Hargate spat, pulling a phaser from his uniform. Effective, Arlen countered. While Hargate was off balance, Arlen threw a micro-detonator. It was a salvage charge, small as his thumb. It stuck to the damaged console. Hargate fired. The bolt seared the air where Arlen had been. Arlen rolled, coming up behind another console. You cannot win, Drake. You are a mechanic, I am an admiral. You are a murderer, Arlen said. He triggered the charge. The explosion was small, but precise. It blew the console apart, exposing the core data systems. Arlen was already there, slamming his data probe into the live wires. Wit, I am in. Shut it down. Shut down the mines. Arlen, I am in. I have the data. Wait. Wit's voice was frantic. I am reading. Oh, by all the stars. Arlen. It is a trap. Hargate was laughing, slumped against the wall, his leg broken by debris. He is right, Drake. You are too late. What? What is it? Kareth is not here, Wit said. The data streaming into Arlen's consciousness. He is at a remote bunker, and he has just activated a failsafe. Hargate gave him a dead man switch. On Arlen's holographic display, the tactical map of the orbit shifted. The gravity mines were not just a blockade. They were active, and they were falling. He is not just blockading. Arlen. He is targeting the city, the civilian shelters, Spire 9, the lower districts. He is going to wipe out the civilian population and blame you, the Shadow Shield. Arlen whispered, the horror dawning. He is going to say, I did this. The perfect end. Hargate coughed. You created the rebellion. Now you get to watch it be cleansed. At that precise moment, 2 floors below, Seraphine Kale's image hid every screen in the city. She was standing in the broadcast core, Mary beside her. The sounds of Ria's firefight were audible, a distant, brutal percussion. People of Koresh, Seraphine said, her voice shaking but unbroken. This is the truth. Kareth has lied. He does not protect us. He sells us. As she spoke, a side door blasted open, and a small, soot-covered Zavari child stumbled in, crying, lost in the chaos of the firefight. A guard from Ria's team moved to grab him, but Seraphine held up her hand. She knelt, her royal robes pooling on the floor. She looked at the terrified child. It is all right, she said, her voice soft. You are safe. She opened her arms. The child hesitated, then ran to her, burying his face in her shoulder. Seraphine stood, lifting the child onto her hip. She turned back to the camera, holding this small, unknown, commoner child, and the image became the most powerful weapon in the war. This is the Covenant, she declared, her voice ringing with power. Not the spear, not the fist. This, to protect, not to possess. Kareth and his human allies offer you only fear. I offer you this. A choice. A future. Rise with us. Claim the Ether Tower. Claim your city in the hub. Arlen watched the broadcast on a cracked monitor. He saw the child. He saw her face. He heard the alarms. Arlen Witt shrieked. The mines. They are in the atmosphere. First impact. 60 seconds Kareth's backup plan. He was going to kill them all. Arlen looked at Hargate, who was trying to crawl to his phaser. He looked at the console, a smoking ruin. He looked at the tactical map, a sea of red. He had a choice. He could go after Hargate. He could try to catch Kareth. Or save first. Secure the civilians. Witt, he said, his voice deadly calm. I cannot stop the mines. Can I redirect them? Redirect them. With what the console is. Not all of them. Just the first wave. Can you retarget the main emitter? Change their trajectory. Change it. To where? Arlen. Where could possibly? Witt's voice died, the AI instantly understanding. Oh, no. Arlen, the feedback loop. It will tear the tower apart. I know, Arlen said. He was already typing, overriding the safeties, his fingers flying. That is the plan. Get everyone out. He slammed his fist on the final control. The alarms in the tower changed from a warning to a final, deafening wail. The building screamed, a deep, structural groan. On the roof, the massive emitter dish glowed, pulling, shifting its magnetic resonance, turning the entire ether tower into the single biggest target on the planet. Seraphine. Rhea Myrie. Arlen bellowed into his comm. Evacuate now. The tower is coming down. That is not a request. He turned. Hargate was gone, vanished into a side escape hatch. Arlen did not care. He ran for the maintenance shaft. He heard the sound before he felt it. A high, thin whistle that ripped the sky apart. The first of the gravity mines, pulled by Arlen's desperate command, impacted the ether tower. The tower did not just explode. It was unmade. The living alloy tore itself apart. The navigation hub vanished in a flash of white light. Arlen, halfway into the shaft, was thrown free. He was falling, tumbling through a rain of molten metal and shattered alloy. He saw the city, a carpet of lights, spinning wildly below him. He saw Seraphine, being dragged by Rhea from the main entrance, just as the tower collapsed. Her face was turned up. Her eyes, even from this distance, found his. Then a piece of falling debris hit him, and the world went black. He woke to the smell of dust and dried herbs, and a profound, agonizing stillness. The last thing Arlen Drake remembered was the sky ripping apart, a symphony of screaming metal, and Seraphine's face, small and pale, looking up as he fell. He was not falling now. He was lying on a cot, his body a map of fresh pain. He opened his eyes. The ceiling was low, carved from rough, gray stone. A single, green chemical lamp cast a soft, watery glow. He is awake. The voice was Mary's. Arlen turned his head. It felt like grinding stones together. Seraphine was sitting on a low stool by his cot, her face smudged with soot, her royal robes replaced by simple, gray fatigues. She looked exhausted, but she was alive. The tower he rasped, his throat raw. Gone, Seraphine said, her voice quiet. You did it. You redirected the mines. They struck the tower, one after another. The feedback loop. It tore the entire structure apart. You saved the civilian sectors. Arlen. All of them. He pushed himself up on his elbows, a sound like broken glass grating in his chest. His ribs were on fire. Hargate Kareth. Seraphine's gaze dropped. Fled. Both of them. When the tower fell and the mines stopped, Kareth's command structure. It dissolved. He ran. Back to his personal fortress in the borderlands. Hargate. He just vanished. Like a ghost. Arlen slammed a fist into the thin mattress. A flare of white-hot agony shot up his arm. But it was nothing compared to the cold, black rage in his gut. I had him. I was there. I had him. You had a choice, Mary said, stepping forward, holding a cup of steaming broth. You chose to save 300,000 lives instead of taking one. This is not a failure. Architect. Arlen took the broth, his hand shaking. He is alive. That is the failure. He will do this again. He will find another world, another warlord, and he will sell his weapons. How many more teams? He could not finish the sentence. He was left alone to heal. The small, underground room was part of a hidden medical bay Rhea's loyalists had maintained. His wrist comm, cracked and dark, lay on a stone table. He picked it up. The blue optic that was Wit's eye was dead. Wit, he said, his voice quiet. Come on, buddy. Talk to me. He tapped the casing, his mechanic's fingers checking the seams. He found a microfracture near the power coupling. A quick jolt from a nearby charging pack, and the optic flickered. Captain, a voice crackled, tinny and full of static. Warning. Would be. Nice. Next time. You decide. To skydive. Without. Parachute. Arlen let out a breath he did not realize he was holding. You are damaged. I am. Offended. Wit corrected, his voice slowly stabilizing as the power equalized. My processors are intact, but my primary housing is currently, well, it is a small, metallic pancake in the rubble of the ether tower. I am running on your comms emergency reserves. My processing speed is, shall we say, significantly reduced. I do not care, Arlen said. It is good to hear you. But they got away. Wit, Hargate, and Kareth. I let them go. There was a long pause, the blue light pulsing. A fascinating ethical analysis, Captain, Wit said, his dry sarcasm returning. A balm on Arlen's raw nerves. You seem to be operating under the human misconception that revenge is a zero-sum game. You are correct. You did not achieve your personal objective of visceral retribution. Wit. However, you did manage to decapitate the entire planetary command structure, destroy the single greatest tool of oppression, shatter the orbital blockade, expose a corrupt human admiral, and catalyze a planet-wide popular revolution. But, by all means, let us focus on the fact that the two bad men got away. Your priorities are, as always, endearingly human. Arlen stared at the comm. A popular revolution. Yes, Wit said. You have been asleep for 3 days. You really should get out more. Things are happening. When Arlen was stable, Rhea Solen escorted him topside. He emerged into a city he did not recognize. The air still smelled of smoke, but it was not the acrid chemical smoke of war. It was the wood smoke of cook fires. The ether tower, once a symbol of overwhelming power, was now a jagged metallic stump, a monument to failure. But the people were not cowering. They were everywhere. The plaza, where Arlen had first met Seraphine, was a sprawling triage center and marketplace, where Kareth's bone-armored troops had once stood. Rhea's honor guard, their blue armor now a symbol of hope, were directing traffic, handing out ration packs. They were not pointing guns. They were clearing rubble, shoulder to shoulder with civilians. This is, Arlen began. Your fault, Rhea said, though her face was not unkind. Her arm was in a sling, but she moved with her old, crisp energy. When the tower fell, and Kareth's voice of God went silent, Seraphine's message was the only one left. The one of her holding that child, it became an icon. She pointed to a wall. A new sigil was being painted over Kareth's black fist. It was a stylized, blue shield, cradling a small, nondescript spire. The Shadow Shield. The district militias rose up. Rhea continued. They stormed the armories. My teams just provided the keys. We are reforging the military. Arlen, my new doctrine. It is very simple. We protect the people first. We protect the state second. In the center of the plaza, on a portable public screen, Myri was speaking. She was not broadcasting. She was teaching. She stood before a crowd of Zavari, humans from the merchant class who had been trapped, and even a few of Kareth's captured soldiers, who looked confused and, for the first time, afraid. The old lies are dead, Mary declared, her voice ringing with the authority of history. The covenant was never a chain. It was a bridge. We will not rebuild the tower. We will build an academy, a place where we will teach the old texts, the real ones, a place where human and Zavari can learn, not to fear, but to understand. Arlen saw it, a city, a world, healing itself. He found Seraphine in the old archive, Spire 4, which had become her unofficial capital. She was surrounded by data slates, maps, and district elders, her face streaked with dirt, her eyes bright. She was allocating water supplies. Rhea has his coordinates, Arlen said, his voice low, cutting through the murmur. The room went silent. Seraphine looked up. Kareth, Arlen said. His border fortress. We can take one of Rhea's long-range flyers. A surgical strike. End this. Before he has a chance to rebuild. Seraphine stared at him, her gaze unwavering. No. The elders murmured. Arlen stepped forward. He is a murderer. He will not stop. And I will not become him, she said, her voice sharp, cutting. I will not begin my new government with an assassination. He has fled. Arlen. He has lost his power. He is irrelevant. He is not irrelevant to me, Arlen growled. I know, she said, her voice softening. And I am sorry for that. But look. She pointed to the map. This is the Northern District. They were loyal to Kareth. They are also starving. His fortress is there. He is hoarding their supplies. She picked up a data slate and handed it to a runner. We are not sending a strike team. We are sending 3 cargo ships, full of food and medical supplies. We are opening a humanitarian corridor. We will win them back. Not by force, but by proving we are better than him. Arlen just stared at her. Wit was right. This was a better form of revenge. It was justice. It was building. That night, he found her on a high balcony, looking out at the ruined stump of the tower. The air was cool, quiet. He did not approach, but stood by the archway. You should have guards. I do, she said, not turning. Rhea has 2 of her best snipers on the roof across the street. They are very protective. He walked to stand beside her, leaving a respectful distance. For a long time, they just watched the city. You are angry with me, she said. No, Arlen said. I am adjusting. You are not a princess. You are a stateswoman. I am just a mechanic. I do not know what to do when the fight is over. Is it over? She asked. I do not know. She turned to face him. The dim light of the Zavari moon caught her face. The council. Myri. Rhea, the elders. They met today. They asked me what title we should give you. Arlen snorted. Title. I do not want a title. They suggested Protector Regent, a human, ruling as guardian of the Zavari people. To honor the covenant. A cold dread filled Arlen. A title, a position, a target. Everything he had run from. "No, I cannot." "I know," she said. "I told them you would refuse. I told them you were not a regent." "Then what did you tell them I was?" "I told them you were a builder," Seraphine said. "A very, very good mechanic, and that we would offer you a job, not a crown." She held out a simple data slate. He took it. The title was simple: Chief Advisor for Community Security and Reconstruction. "It is a fancy name for a salvager," he said, a small, tired smile touching his lips. "We need to demine the city," she said. "We need to rebuild the sensor grid, the power, the water. We need someone who knows how to take things apart, so we can put them back together, the right way." He looked at the slate, then at her. I accept." The moment was still. He saw her glance at his hand, then back at his face. It was a question. "Seraphine," he asked, his voice rough. "May I?" "Yes," she said, her voice soft, but firm. Arlen did not grab her. He did not pull her. He simply raised his hand, and she met him halfway, placing her hand in his. It was not a gesture of romance. It was one of an accord, a true, two-way compact. His calloused, human fingers wrapped around her slender, zavery ones, and on her arm, beneath the cloth. He felt a sudden, familiar warmth, the covenant. But the moment of peace was shattered. "Captain," Witt's voice, sharp and urgent, suddenly crackled from his calm. "You need to see this." Arlen's blood ran cold. He and Seraphine pulled apart, the spell broken. He activated the comms holographic projector. "I have been monitoring all deep space traffic since I came back online," Witt said. "Kareth has been quiet, too quiet. Just now." He sent a signal, a single, high-bandwidth burst, to an unknown partner, off-world. A string of data appeared in the air. "He is desperate," Witt said, his voice grim. "He is calling in his last marker. He has requested the activation of something called the Echo Core." "An Echo Core?" Seraphine stepped closer, her face pale. That is forbidden technology. A myth. It is not a weapon." "What is it?" Arlen demanded. "It is a consciousness weapon," Seraphine whispered, her eyes wide with a new, ancient fear. "It does not kill the body. It kills the will. It generates a wave of pure, collective fear, illusions, nightmares. It forces a population to relive its worst traumas until the social fabric disintegrates." "A terror weapon," Arlen said. "Hargate. It has to be Hargate." "No," Witt said, his voice low. "The encryption signature. It is not Kratos Group. It is not Zavari. It is something else. Something I do not recognize, but the energy resonance." Witt's voice faltered, a simulated moment of pure confusion. "What?" Arlen said. "What is it?" "The signature. The energy pattern of the activating signal. I am cross-referencing it now with Mari's historical database. The one she took from the tower." A new string of data appeared, settling beside the first. They were identical. "Arlen," Witt said, his synthesized voice cracking. "The signal Kareth used to activate the Echo Core. It is a perfect, one-to-one match for the bioelectric signature of the protective covenant." Arlen stared at the data. He looked at Seraphine, who was looking at her own arm, a look of dawning, absolute horror on her face. The signal for the ultimate weapon of fear was a perfect mirror of the symbol for ultimate protection. The data strings hung in the air between them, holographic and damning. The protective covenant, the Echo Core, the signature of ultimate compassion, and the signature of ultimate terror. They were identical. Seraphine's hand flew to her arm, a gesture of instinctive horror, as if the mark beneath her sleeve had suddenly become a snake. It cannot be. The covenant it is healing. It is protection. It is a signal. Seraphine, Arlen said, his voice a low, hard-edged instrument. The mechanic was gone. The architect was here. A frequency, a carrier wave, and it has two settings. Kareth has found the one we did not know existed. He looked at her. His eyes narrowed, piecing together a puzzle that was still missing its most critical piece. But how? How does he get the key? How does he access a Xavery power that you carry? Seraphine could not meet his gaze. She looked down at her hands. The silence on the balcony stretched, thick and cold. Seraphine, Arlen pressed, a cold dread rising in his throat. What are you not telling me they went to marry? The old archivist had taken over the Spire 4 broadcast room, turning it into her center of operations. Ancient, glowing texts were projected on the walls, replacing the static of Kareth's old propaganda. When Mary saw the two data strings Arlen projected, she did not look surprised. She looked anciently, profoundly sad. I had hoped, she whispered, her old hand tracing the lines of the holographic code. I had hoped this part of the past was truly dead. What is it? Rhea Solen demanded, stepping in from the doorway. She was armor-clad, impatient. It is a weapon. We find it, we break it. Simple. It is not a weapon, Captain, Mary said, her voice heavy. It is a dial, and it has been turned to a frequency we have long forgotten. She brought up a new text, one she had to unseal with 3 separate voice codes. It was a dark, pulsing script. The Covenant, Mary explained, is not a Xavery power. It is an interface, an ancient telepathic accord, designed by the first ancestors of both our peoples, human and Xavery. It was meant to bridge the gap, to share everything, empathy, understanding, sensation. Arlen looked at Seraphine. A shared mind interface. Yes, Mary said, but it was too powerful. Our ancestors, they were not ready. It was not just empathy they shared. It was rage, fear, pain. The interface became a weapon, a shadow protocol that could break the will of armies, an echo core. It was used, once, and it nearly destroyed both our races. Mary pointed to the text. The firsts, in their terror, sealed it. They broke the key in 2. They built a wall inside the interface, locking the shadow frequency away, leaving only the light frequency active. The one for protection, the one for compassion. That is the covenant you inherited, Seraphine. A beautiful, powerful, crippled thing. A promise, with its dark reflection, sealed just beneath the surface. Arlen's mind was racing. So, Kareth's dark partner. They did not build the echo core. They just unlocked the other half of the signal. They found the shadow. But they could not have unlocked it, Seraphine said, her voice shaking. Without the active half. Without me. Arlen turned, his gaze fixed on her. The final piece. You said you felt a compatibility in orbit. The day of the execution. Seraphine looked at him, her face a mask of guilt. It was me, Arlen. The confession came out in a ragged whisper. I was on the dais. I knew it was a trap. I knew I was going to die. I have always felt this thing inside me, this power. My mother, the Empress, warned me never to use it, never to call out. But I was desperate. Her eyes filled with tears. I reached out, with my mind. I was just screaming for help. I felt something, a mind in orbit, a human mind. It felt like mine, like a lock, waiting for a key. I did not know what I was doing. I just pulled. I pulled you. Arlen felt the blood drain from his face. The singularity. The invitation to the party. That was you. I was trying to summon a miracle. Arlen, she cried. I did not know. I did not know it would. I did not know I was pulling you into a gravity mine. I pulled. And you crashed. He was not random. He was not an accident. He was a summoned, desperate last resort. His occupational hazard had not led him here. Her terror had. Rhea let out a sharp, shocked breath. By the firsts. But Arlen was shaking his head. No, that is not right. Even if she pulled. Why me? Of all the ships in orbit. Why was I the compatibility? Why did the Covenant? Why did her call? Lock onto me. He stared at his own hands, his mechanic's hands, stained and calloused. He was just a salvager. He was just... Captain! Witt's voice, startlingly clear, spoke from his comm. I believe I have an answer. I am accessing a secondary layer, a data store in your own neural interface that I was, until this moment, firewalled from accessing. The file is labeled Janus Cell. The name hit Arlen like a physical blow. It was not a memory. It was a phantom, a word that made his stomach clench. Witt, he said, his voice low. Open it. I am, Captain. It seems your past as a tactical architect was a significant understatement. The data flooded Arlen's mind, not as a memory, but as a report, cold and clinical. Project Janus Cell. Objective re-engineer the ancient human-Zaveri Covenant interface. Primary architect Arlen Drake. Status Phase 1 complete. The key, the human half of the Accord, has been successfully stabilized and imprinted. He was the architect, not of tactics, of the Covenant itself. He had been chosen, years ago, for a top-secret Humanity United project to try and reactive the Lost Age Accord as a new tool for peace. He had been the one who designed the modern, stable key. Then, the report continued. Incident Cygnus 6. Architect Drake's entire tactical team vaporized. Kratos Group malfeasance. Architect Drake is compromised. Severe trauma. His guilt. It is destabilizing the interface. He is a broken key. Final order. The Janus Cell project is too valuable to terminate. The key is in his head. We cannot wipe it, but we can seal it. Bury the project memories. Bury the key. Bury it all behind the trauma of Cygnus 6. Let him believe the lie. Let him retire. Let him think he is just a mechanic. The key is safe, as long as it is dormant. Arlen stumbled back, his hand on the wall. He was not just a survivor. He was a project. His entire life, his entire retirement, his running away. It was all a lie, a construct, built by his own superiors to hide him from himself. My God, he breathed. I am the other half. I am the key. And when you pulled, Mary said, her eyes wide with a terrible, dawning clarity, looking at Seraphine. You were not just pulling a random human. You were pulling the only human in the galaxy who could answer. You were calling your partner. You woke him up. An alarm blared, a harsh, red pulse that shattered the revelation. Rhea whirled, her comm activating. Report, what is it? A panicked voice from a street patrol. It is everywhere the sky. It is. Screaming, people are. They are seeing phantoms. The echo core was active. Rhea ran to the balcony. The city, so calm moments before, was descending into madness. She could see people in the plaza, swatting at the air, cowering from enemies that were not there. A collective, waking nightmare. "Kareth has activated it," Rhea yelled. "He is broadcasting the fear. He is tearing the city apart from the inside." Arlen, Seraphine, and Mary joined her. They could feel it. A low, psychic thrum beneath the pavement. A wave of pure, irrational terror. Arlen felt his own ghosts rise up. The fire of Cygnus 6. The faces of his team. Seraphine cried out, clutching her head, seeing the dais, the plasma cannon, her own execution playing out. "It is working," Arlen said, fighting the illusion, his teeth clenched. "He is using the shadow. How do we stop it?" "We cannot stop it," Mary said, her voice shaking. "It is a frequency. How do you stop a broadcast?" "You do not stop it," Arlen said. The architect, the designer of the system, taking over. His eyes were clear, cold, and burning. "You override it. You do not fight a shadow, Mari. You turn on a brighter light." He looked at Seraphine, his gaze intense. "He is using a fractured, weaponized half of the Covenant. We have to use the whole thing. Both halves. Together." "Open! Open it fully!" Mary was horrified. "Architect, no. The first sealed it for a reason. To share everything. The trauma, the pain. It will drive you both mad." "We are already going mad," Arlen countered. "This is the only way. He is broadcasting fear. We have to broadcast. Everything else. Empathy. Trust. All of it." He grabbed Seraphine's shoulders. "It means sharing it all. My past. My ghosts. The guilt. Everything I am. Everything I ran from." Seraphine, still shaking, met his gaze. Her fear was there. But beneath it, he saw the same iron will that had survived the plaza. "And mine," she said. "My doubts, my failures, my hope." "Rhea," Arlen barked. "Get us to the broadcast room. Guard the door. Do not let anything in." What is the tactical plan?" Rhea demanded, completely lost. "We are the tactical plan," Arlen said. They sealed the door. It was just the three of them. Arlen, Seraphine, and Wit's voice from the comm. The room was thrumming with the dark energy of the echo core. "Wit," Arlen said, "I need you to rig the broadcast array. I need you to turn it into a telepathic amplifier. Use us as the signal source." "Captain," Wit's voice was heavy with statistical dread. "If you do this, you will be broadcasting your combined, unfiltered consciousness to the entire city. If you lose control, if your trauma overwhelms your reason, you will not just go mad. You will take 300,000 people with you." "I know," Arlen said. He turned to Seraphine. She was terrified. I do not know how to start," he admitted, his voice suddenly small. I am just a mechanic." "No, you are not," Seraphine said. She stepped forward, her hands raised. "And I am not just a princess. We are what Mary said. A bridge. You taught me to trust. Arlen, now, trust me." She placed her hands on his. "I trust you," he said, his voice rough. I am sorry for what you are about to see." "And you," she whispered. "Wit, do it." Arlen closed his eyes. Engaging the Janus interface, Wit said. It was not a joining. It was a detonation. He saw everything. Her childhood. The cold, lonely court. The crushing weight of her mother's expectations. her terror on the dais, the smell of her own flesh scorching as a phaser bolt grazed her, her shock at the Covenant mark, her dawning hope. When she saw him save the child, she saw him, the Janus Cell Lab, the pride of creation, the horror of Cygnus 6. The fire, the faces, the screams of his team as they were vaporized, his guilt, a living, monstrous thing that had hollowed him out, his penance, fixing ships, saving people, one by one, to try and balance a ledger that would never, ever be clean. The Echo Core felt them. The shadow frequency lashed out. The phantoms of Kareth, of Vorax, of Hargate, rose up in their shared mind. The fear wave tried to tear them apart, but they were not alone. Arlen's mind, the architect, the soldier, wrapped around her fear. He shielded her from the vision of her own execution. Her mind, the healer, the leader, did not turn away from Cygnus 6. She faced his trauma, and she shared it. She took his guilt, his pain, and she did not try to fix it. She simply held it. She accepted it. And in that moment of shared, accepted, unutterable pain, the light broke. The combined frequency of their minds, trauma and trust, guilt and grace, fear and hope blasted out from the Spire 4 array. A wave, not of fear, a wave of pure, unfiltered empathy. In the plaza, a Zavari civilian, cowering from a phantom of a collapsing building, suddenly froze. He was not just seeing his own fear. He was seeing a burning starship. He was seeing a young woman on a dais. He felt a mechanic's guilt. He felt a princess's hope. The empathy wave washed over the city. The illusions, the phantoms of the Echo Core, built only on fear, had no defense against it. They were irrelevant. The fear was not defeated. It was understood. It was healed. The collective nightmare stopped. In his border fortress, Warlord Kareth slammed his fist on his console. He was watching his city, calm. The riots had stopped. The panic was gone. "What is happening?" he roared. "Why is it not working? More power give me. More. Fear." His second in command, a hardened veteran of 100 battles, stepped forward. He, too, had felt the wave. He had felt the human's guilt. He had felt his princess's resolve. "Sir," the commander said, his voice strange, quiet, "the city is no longer afraid of you." "Then they will fear my armies," Kareth shrieked, his face a mask of rage. "Attack now." The commander looked at the other men in the room. They all looked back, their eyes clear. The spell was broken. Kareth was not a god. He was not a tradition. He was just a small, angry man. "No, sir," the commander said. He unholstered his phaser. "We will not." He leveled the weapon at Kareth's chest. "Warlord Kareth, for crimes against the Covenant and the people of Zavari, you are under arrest." Weeks later, the city was rebuilding. The air smelled of molten alloy and fresh-cut stone. Kareth was in a holding cell, awaiting a public, civil trial. Arlen had been insistent, his voice ringing through the first council meeting. "We do it your way," he had said to Seraphine. "Justice, not execution." In the Spire 4 archive, the newly formed Protective Council was in session. Seraphine sat at the head of the table, but not on a throne. "The Empress," she announced, "will remain in seclusion. The throne. It is a symbol of an age that is over. We will be a council, governed by accord." Captain Rhea Selen, her arm now healed, nodded. "The military is yours." Archivist Mary smiled. "The historians are yours." Arlen was in the corner. He was wearing his clean, patched utility coveralls. He was leaning over a piece of damaged hardware, his plasma cutter, on a low, precise setting, welding a microcircuit. A small, Zavary child, the same one from the ether tower, tugged on his sleeve. Arlen smiled, put down his tool, and handed the child a small, repaired data toy. Seraphine watched him, the bond between them now a quiet, steady warmth, a presence as real as the air they breathed. He walked over, wiping grease from his hands. "Councilwoman," he said, the corner of his mouth ticking up. "The water grid is at 92%, and the comm network is stable." "Excellent work, advisor," she replied, her voice formal, but her eyes were not. "Captain." Witt's voice, polished and clear, projected from Arlen's new, gleaming wristcom. "A final analysis, if I may." "Go ahead, Witt," Arlen said, folding his arms. "My calculations indicate a 0.0001% probability for the current outcome. We crash-landed in a war zone, allied with a fugitive princess, exposed an intercorporate conspiracy, defeated a mythical champion by refusing to fight, destroyed the primary planetary fortress by luring the enemy's own weapons into it, and resolved a psychic terror campaign by broadcasting feelings." Witt paused. "We, in effect, Captain, crashed a party and came home with a complete, planet-wide governmental reformation. It is statistically absurd." Arlen laughed. It was a real, unrestrained sound. He looked at Seraphine. "It seems," he said, "that we did." She stood and offered her hand, her Zavary hand, to his human one. The gesture was simple, public, and spoke more than any speech. "The hard part is done. Arlen Drake," she said. "Now, we learn how to build, instead of just destroying." Arlen took her hand. The grip was firm, equal. "That," he said, "I can do."